sauce. I've also changed it up where I have down in the bottom third. I've just got images. I know everybody does like After Effects. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, but I guess I'll learn over the weekend. But for now, you just have some static. I got a logo there. Um, yeah. What was I going at? Oh, yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to follow up on what I was doing on Monday. Since this is like my first time back on the horse, I guess, since streaming like 2 years ago. I didn't really have a plan 2 years ago, and I didn't really see a lot of people streaming, like specifically coding on Twitch. There were like a handful of people, but it wasn't as consistent as today. Like there's like a whole like group of people, and then like people like I was on Jason's stream a couple months ago. So like this is what I guess what I strive to achieve to do. Um, I was just super impressed with what Jason had put together, and I want to reach this level. So like the hope is that I know how to do all that stuff, but I didn't have the time to actually check that out and try that out. But it looked like his actual, I guess, left fifth or left third is actually pretty static too as well. So I wonder if I can I can actually do all that stuff. Anyway, I'll get there probably by next Monday. I will do a stream and try to figure out how to do all this stuff and make the quality better. But yeah, definitely count on me doing this on a weekly basis. I do have there's me. I do have a site up, which is Mutual Fund. This is an actual URL I had laying around for, I guess I don't want to say how long. It's been embarrassing how long I've had this URL, but I've always wanted to do something with it. So I think I might theme this as like mutual fund streaming, live streaming or something. I don't know, but I have the name, so I might as well use it. But yeah, mutual fund. Funny story. I actually wanted to build a side project around mutual fund picking, which I think is like a bigger thing now than it was 10 years ago, which is when I bought this URL. It wasn't 10 years ago. It was like 8 years ago. But anyway, that would be a fun little project, but I think I have a thing to do with the name anyway now. So let's go ahead and focus back on this. Let's see. All right. So the goal that I had on 2 days ago was basically, as a user, I want to be able to find within open source, I want to be able to find the contributions that I have for a particular repo. And like this story is very specific to me working on this project. I had written a comment, and the way for me to like keep track of like what I posted on or what I was talking, I was keeping like a little note section here within open source, but that's silly. I'd rather just, if I have an active conversation going or a contribution going, like I just want to see the list. And then like the whole idea for open source is to have like a dashboard for you to manage your open source contributions, which sounds silly because GitHub does that. But I have a more broader dream for open source, which is more like discovery as well as mentoring in the future of getting into open source. So like that's the end goal. But for now, I'm just working on a small feature, which is finding out what issues you're watching, commenting, subscribe to, and then pull request, merge, open, closed. It's like be like an inactive and an active state. So just like filter the content that's coming through. Just a quick note, I did create a YouTube playlist too as well. So this experience I'll have hopefully with the story arc. And try to keep around like 30, 45 minutes per video. So that way they're watchable or skippable, I guess. But I did want to go over some of the tinkering around I was doing this morning. So I ended up getting really blocked, and with being like not really comfortable streaming and talking to myself, because I think I am talking to myself at this point. I don't know how many people are online. If anybody comments, I'll see it on the screen. But for now, I'll just act like this is just me for now. Yeah. So if going into the GitHub GraphQL Explorer, which lives here. I was trying to use the Explorer to like find an organization ID, and then from there find this contribution collection is what it was called on GitHub's API. And I was just like thumbing through, going back and forth. And I got stuck on like date times and then trying to figure out how to write date times properly or convert those using JavaScript. Yeah, so it was a complete mess. Hopefully in the future I'll have a better structure and like I'll know exactly the steps that I should be actually following to solve this. But I say all that because there's another tool which I'd mentioned verbally, but I didn't actually use on the stream. Like I think I even showed it, and that was silly. But this thing called OneGraph. OneGraph is like, I don't know. I'm not sure what their pitch is. They are, what's it? OneGraph. Handle messy integrations. So yeah, they basically take a bunch of APIs and then bunch them into the one graph. They use GraphQL. They're big fans of GraphQL as well, which is why I ended up discovering them just from the GraphQL angle. But the cool thing is that they have all these other APIs that are built in to the platform that you can just authenticate into. Okay, United States Postal Services. I didn't know that site. So Netlify was here, Slack, Spotify. So all these APIs are available for you to sort of like co-locate into one endpoint, which is one GraphQL endpoint. I'm not doing any of that. I'm actually only doing one thing. Oh, they have RSS too. Yeah, they had a lot going on. This is sweet. But anyway, I wanted like a better introduction to using the GitHub GraphQL API. I was using GraphQL, which is now Prisma, for a bit, but I wasn't using any of the whole data caching or storing the database side of Prisma. There's a lot of like one in like I guess Firebase for this is not a good pitch for them, but all these other tools are kind of like Firebase, but for GraphQL, which is what they're not really. But I guess simplify the explanation. So did a lot of work for you to get started. That's what I was doing. That's really where the original, I guess, story at open source started. Is I wanted to try out GraphQL and try it out in like a little approachable way. Yeah, so that's why I have this project, which I'm still working on. But then I discovered OneGraph, which does a lot of the work for you, which is also cool because I completely I was the one that actually got this into the developer.github.com, but I spent all my time like trying to search and trying to find stuff, and like this is like the challenge of doing live streaming, or I guess doing it live, and not having any preparation. But like if I wanted to find out like my current rate limit, I could actually go into this little explorer thing right here and click through and see like how much my rate limit is left. So it's great that you could actually search in the docs for like collections or even contributions. But once I actually found this contribution collection, I could have just went straight into the Explorer and then thumbed through and seen exactly what details are available to me. So like if I wanted to see the first 10 followers, I can just go ahead and click through, which is amazing. I don't know why. Where's the login? Login or we'll just go with login. I don't want to out anybody who's following me or who I'm following. These are my followers. Yeah. So if I just wanted the list of the first 10 followers, like all this data I can just click through rather than this is pretty cool with GraphQL that I can sort of just type in stuff and sort of autocomplete, which is great. But realistically, like I don't know what I'm looking for. Also, I could hit like Z here and still get stuff. I guess bad example. But anyway, my thought was like if I hit the wrong button or the wrong character, maybe I want to get the proper autocomplete. But for the sake of just seeing like what my rate limiting is or figuring out like what the details or the endpoints for that, I could use this Explorer. And what I'm getting at is that this is actually powered by OneGraph, this little Explorer, or at least it's not powered by OneGraph. OneGraph built it because they use it for themselves, but they actually open source this whole Explorer so other tools like GitHub can use it. But what I'm getting at is OneGraph is already authenticated with GitHub for me. And look at all this other stuff you could actually do as well. And the cool thing about that is that I can now, just from thumbing through, I was able to figure out exactly the details I needed to get what I was looking for. Don't mind this. I'm actually not using that. That was a previous test. But what I did figure out which I've outlined here in my details. So looking at issue 41 on open source, I discovered that contributions collections, which is the thing I was sort of stuck on the last time, was not good. Like that was not the way I wanted to go. What I really wanted to do is look for this little flag. Where is this flag? Viewer subscription. Oh no, this here, viewer subscribed. So if you go back to, I guess to better explain what I was doing last time, primer octagons. What I was doing is I was saving any conversations I was having with primer octagons, which is the repo that lives here. I would just leave it in a note, and like a little note of like, okay, this is an issue about accessibility, so I have a link here. I'm going to work on this. But rather than like, this is a link, I'm already using the GitHub API. Like this should just be natural. It just show up in a list down here. Here are the open conversations that you're having already on this project. Like follow up on these. So every time I sit down on Saturday or Sunday when I'm ready to do open source, I can just click these links and then rush through them. Very similar to how GitHub notifications work today, the new version of notifications. But I only want to filter like with my open source. So like, I don't know. It seems like I'm sort of like rebuilding GitHub, which I'm not. It just happens to be GitHub can ship faster than I can. I've been building this project for like since 2017, and like we're 2020 now. So yeah, GitHub's definitely overlapped on some of the features I already have, which I've been adjusting as I go along. But I mean, I work at GitHub, so I'm not really competing with GitHub. I don't know why I'm trying to like dance around that and being all awkward. But anyway, I'm not trying to build another GitHub. I'm just trying to build a tool for myself. And GitHub is building those features for me, which is great. So what I'm getting at is that I'm filtering all my issues. I'm doing the first 10. I could probably just do the first 100, but I doubt I'll ever have 100 open issue conversations. If I am having that many conversations, I should probably be a maintainer of this project. But until I get to that point, we'll just leave it at 10. But this is the exact GraphQL query that I was looking for, and I'll even show that by just popping that right there, and then you can see, oh man, I have, because I didn't have query. Let's make this a little pretty. Close out my docs. Oh, that's not docs. Close out the Explorer. Sorry, this literally just had a cup of coffee. It's coming back for a vengeance. All right. Okay. So OneGraph does have some specific endpoints that they've sort of, because the GitHub GraphQL API is not 100% one-to-one match. They have little workarounds to add extra endpoints, and I was using one, so that was what they're explaining. That's what they were complaining about in the error. But if you can see now that I can get all the data I'm looking for specifically for contributions for this project. So the project in question was the primer components, not the octagons. I have the note on the wrong repo too as well, which is another reason why user error. Like I should just make this automatic. I don't need to make notes around where the conversation is and then link in the wrong one. There's other cool things of what I think I would probably use in the future, like viewer having so the viewer is whoever's logged into GitHub at that moment within open source, because I'm just using the GitHub API directly. If the user hasn't started, it would show false. Since I've started this repo, it's a true. You can also see if the user has subscribed to the repository. So specifically, if I am on here, bad example, GitHub primer components. Cool. Yeah, so if I'm watching it, then I'm subscribing. I don't know if I'm watching releases, I wonder if that is still going to show up as subscribe. So let's just hit that again. So now, viewer subscription. All right, so it's not unsubscribed and it's not subscribed. It's interesting that it's null. I should probably ask questions about that in the future. But if I was watching, it should say subscribed. So here we go. Yeah. Crazy. So if I am only watching releases, it comes back null. That might be an error. But I wonder what happens if I'm ignoring. Ignored. Oh, interesting. Um, yeah, I know who to ask about that at GitHub, and I'm gonna ask about that. It should be null. I'm also gonna grab a screenshot too as well. But yeah, interesting that it should say probably releases or something. But yeah, that was cool. I just found a possible error on GitHub's API. But let me go back to what I was talking about. So anyway, I can find out if I'm subscribing. I can find out if I read or admin permissions. So because I have no contribution status or anything like that within the primer org, I'm read only, which is what most people have. I'm not an administrator, and then yes, I can subscribe. And I think this can I subscribe might be like there's an org, like if I was the Facebook org, like I could probably read, but I can't subscribe. Actually, I don't know why they would have you not subscribe. Oh, not Facebook. Wow, somebody actually has face. And so if I just, yeah, I mean, I could subscribe. Yeah, I don't know why that exists, but it doesn't really matter for this case. Yeah, so any of the data that I'm looking for is pretty much right here. So that's what I discovered actually early today. So the next step is actually making this work. So I want to, I want to go to keep all my code. I'm curious if, yeah, hit me up on Twitter. Maybe I should actually have my Twitter down here. Because, like, I'm a fan of Twitch, but I don't know if that's where the community is going to be for this. This might be a lot of, like, after the fact people will be looking at, but we'll see. I have a friend who does a lot of game streaming, and he basically just does it all the time. Or he just has a consistent schedule, and that's how he built a community. So I'm just going to stop typing the same thing over and over again. But yeah, I'm taking a little page from his book and just show up on a regular basis. So we'll see if showing up every Monday and Wednesday and possibly like a weekend will work out for me. All right, so my approach to working open source, though this is like my project, it is open source, is I like to create a branch whenever I start working with the issue number. It helps to remind me to, when I open the PR, to link the issue and the PR together when I see that issue number directly in there. And I'm just going to basically set up contribution endpoint. It's not really an endpoint. It's GraphQL, so it's a query, which is cool. So now I get to sort of explain exactly what is going on. And my computer is going pretty slow. Here we go. Yeah, so I guess when I'm using like the, because I'm using MacVim, which is not the built-in Vim, I actually noticed it was actually pretty slow before as well. Yeah, what I'm getting at, sorry, I'm like doing this like sort of like subconscious fourth wall breaking thinking, but not saying anything, but then thinking through. But what I was getting at is while I'm streaming, I've noticed Vim is actually pretty slow to actually get started. But so let me walk you through the code base, and looks like that lower third's gonna bite us a bit. But there's not too much down here. It's just a package.json. Ooh, how do we do that? Okay, yeah, not missing much there. Package.json. So this is a React app. Sorry, and what we're looking at right now, didn't really explain. I'm pulling up this code directly in Vim, and this is the repo that we're actually looking at here. So, queso, my wife says that a lot. She's like, oh, queso. Yeah, I love queso. So I have a basic React app. There's not really much to talk about on the React side. I do have a storybook, hopefully in the future. Actually, This will require some design, so I will probably show off Storybook in a future version. But for now, I've got components. I've got containers because this app's old enough that separating your pages or Redux, like context type of stuff, would be in a container. I don't really read React blog posts as much as I used to a couple years ago. Like I'm not really up to speed on like the latest and greatest. Like I'm using hooks in this, but like I don't know if containers are still a thing, to be honest. Like hit me up on Twitter. I'm a bdougio on Twitter. Please hit me up if you end up finding this on YouTube or Twitch after the fact. Otherwise, I assume you probably know who I am if you're actually watching this, because I'm not advertising this anywhere besides Twitter. All right. So I've got a containers, which is my 2 pages. Open source basically is the dashboard. So that's where you log in. Or sorry, that's technically the login screen takes over the dashboard, but it's still a dashboard. It is based on if you're logged in or not. And then the other page is going to be, this is an error I actually found. So I'm doing error handling, very interesting. Like it's this little red message up here. I did this like on a Sunday night, and I did the quickest, like the lowest friction way to do it as possible. But anyway, what I'm noticing if I save a repo, I don't know why I'm explaining this, but if I save a repo, probably because you saw this bug. If I save a repo and they change the name, so Toolman Tim actually changed the release drafter and has redirected it into renamed it to release drafter. Like basically he wanted them, like similar to what I'm doing to probably do soon too as well. It's open source. I'm probably going to create, I already have an org actually, so I'll probably move this to its own org. So basically he did that. Instead of keeping this under your personal account, bump this up into its own org, and then you have a bunch of other features and collaboration and team stuff. But anyway, I clicked this because I want to explain it, but what I do want to explain is that this is the other page, basically. Sorry, I'm like going off on tangents. Also, look at this over scroll here. Like, why is it so weird? This is all open source, so if anybody wants to help me figure out some of these weird bugs, I also have some weird bugs in Safari, CSS bugs. I don't use Safari very often, so I'm learning about it. I'm learning how to develop on Safari as I sort of try to squash some bugs. But what I'm getting at is I have 2 pages, dashboard, some basic React router to do all the routing if anybody's interested. And then I've got the thing that handles the login is this oft HOC. Now, this is something I stole from, I quote unquote stole. When I was working in this, I worked at a company called Netlify, and this is the pattern we use for handling login. It might be different. It might be different now. They could have changed this, but when I worked there, this is how we handle login with this like higher order component, which I know is not as popular anymore now in the world of hooks. But I'm not going to change all the code that works because it works. And then what was it getting at? Yeah, so I have this code that's going to pull on the repository goals. And I've gone through a couple different names. So goals is what I've called anything that I've saved as an issue. Sorry. The way I should probably back up a bit too as well. The way I'm saving the data, so this is like a Jamstack site. And I'm hoping that I'll explain all this so that way the next time I do this, I don't, not there, jamstack.org, jamstack.io, no. Hopefully I explained all this and I don't have to explain it out in the future. So I'm just going to front load all this explanation now, and then I can just refer back to. But if you're familiar with the Jamstack, I run a podcast called Jamstack Radio. It's awesome. If you want to talk, please reach out. I'd love to have you on. We talk about Jamstack, talk about front end stuff, talk about Svelte. I think I might reach out to someone I know who's doing Svelte. But yeah, the Jamstack is it's a way to explain front end architecture and how you make decisions. That's about it. So I say that because it separates your backend and front end. And with this project, open source, I have no backend. Actually, I do. I do have a backend. Everybody's got a backend. But what I've chosen to do is that GitHub is actually my backend. So with open source, like I have a project, and then if I go to bduggy open source goals, you'll notice that all the issues that are open. So this is not even, it's a repo with no content. I'm going to add to help do caching and saving data. I'm going to add like list of issues and stuff like that as JSON files. But until I get there, it's always going to be an empty repo. I'm also going to probably break some of my users. I don't know. I would love people to use this, but I have some breaking changes I have to make in the future. So I haven't really been like very forward marketing-y about open source, even though I have a big old logo down that way. But anyways, so all these like Toolman, Tim, Release Drafter, like the reason why I'm getting the 404 and it's not redirecting is because I'm actually storing the name of all the repos I'm saving directly as an issue. So like what I'm getting at is my entire backend is GitHub. So as soon as I log in with open source, it pulls up the list of all my open issues, which I'm calling goals. These are repo goals, or they should probably just be repos, but I call them repository goals because what I do is you can actually create notes for the goals. And what I'm doing is using GitHub issues as my database. So all the notes that you see in that little box right here for not component. Oh, it is components. No, it's not that one. That was the default. Man, that horizontal scroll should be like that. Yeah, it's because the width is so much wider. But yeah, so what you see here, if anybody's curious, I'm using spectacles to like move the screens really quickly. Some trick I learned from a couple companies ago. One of my coworkers used it, and I was like, oh, I need that. Yeah, so what I'm getting at is these notes are basically one-to-one inside the issue, and that's how that works. I have some thoughts on how to use the comments as also issues and probably not use the actual notes box, but I have some plans that I have written out. I just haven't been able to, hopefully as I have these steamed streams, I can sort of talk through and work through some of these issues and problems and features. So with that being said, I am going to stop looking at my phone, and I think for the next 20 minutes, for the next 20 minutes, I'm probably just going to add an endpoint and then maybe do a little bit of sketch to see how I'm gonna put it on the screen. And I think that's probably gonna round out our stream for now. So I did all that explanation because I opened up repository goals. I'm also doing like this thing where I'm actually grabbing the ID for the open source goals repo. This is when you log in with sorry, I just noticed that I spelled this wrong. It's gonna eat away at me. Contribution. Cool. Yeah, so I'm just grabbing the repo ID, and that repo ID is grabbing stuff. I was using Apollo for this, but when I switched to Apollo hooks, because I switched everything to React hooks, I found that Apollo was just getting in the way. Like I didn't really need it for the limited amount of fetching I was doing from GitHub. Also, I wasn't actually doing caching properly. So when I was looking to do a better caching story, I looked at an Apollo, but it was conflicting with OneGraph, which I did not mention that my authentication is actually OneGraph as well. So if I log out, just log in with GitHub, this pop-up box is OneGraph. OneGraph has this Off Guardian is the open source project that sort of handles the authentication. Yeah, they're actually doing this for me. The problem is, like, I wanted to add some assets. Like, it's an authorized first app. Like, this should say open sourced, which I will change hopefully soon. But I also want to like add a logo, so that way if you see this logo everywhere, at least you'll know that you're in the right place and that you're not giving away your data. It's also an OAuth app too as well. Like I'd prefer to do a GitHub app because then you can actually see exactly what things I'm asking for you. Which at the moment it's with OAuth apps on GitHub, it says everything. You hand everything away, which could be concerning for people. So if I want people to actually use this thing, like they don't want to give up all their data, which I think is still GDPR compliant because I'm not actually asking for emails or storing any data. You own all your data with open source, which is the other thing why I'm using GitHub as a backend because I don't want to mess with storing user data just to get them to do open source contributions in the open. So all that being said, I'm opting with OneGraph. If anybody is interested in going into more detail on how that works, before I can actually focus on a whole stream about that, feel free to reach out and I can do that. But I do plan on updating that authentication flow or improving it because it is open sourced. But what I'm getting at is as soon as I sort of like load, I'm using a React hook, which is use effect. It's setting the goals ID and then it's like fetching repository issues. Which the issues again, those are my goals. So you see those. I'm fetching the one from the one repo, which is the goals ID here. I'm fetching the issues because I know issues is where all my data is going to be, and that's how I'm listing my goals in this what am I getting at? In this component. So I guess the question is, or sorry, the place I need to be is goals. So I'm listing out my goals. And then, man, why do I still have this hard coded? It has a list item. So, sorry. So that 328 right here and that TBD, like all that stuff is hard coded directly in there, which I do want to fix in the future. I just never got around to it, actually making that dynamic. PR is welcome. The only problem is at this point in time, I'm not actually fetching the proper data to make that work. So where I'm fetching the goals, actually I need to also fetch stars, which is my other issue. No big deal. And let's see, repository goals. And then what I'm trying to do is once I'm on the I sort of transition from the dashboard and click through, what actually shows is, I'm actually not even sure myself. It's been a while. Is it not repository? Yeah. Yeah, so once I've clicked through, I do another fetch, and that's where I grab the next bit of data, and that's all the data that we see once I pop onto this guy. So clicking through, and that's all the data I see here. So I got my list. I'm fetching just like the 5 issues. It's paginated, so I can see the issues, and these are going to be the issues on primer octagons. And reminder, this is the notes. So in the actual issue header, or sorry, the issue body, it is going to be, that's my note. And then I'm fetching, this is where I actually fetch the stars. So this is like where design, like architecture, I didn't actually have, I should probably just, I don't think the stars need to even be here, to be quite honest. But I need some data to sort of map, like when I designed it, I had thought, oh, stars should be here. Also, I don't remember this being so off. I don't know what changed. Specifically, this star is so high. But anyway, yeah, so that's where I'm at. So I say all that, and hopefully that's sort of given the groundwork to sort of explain exactly what's happening. I didn't talk about fetching either. So I will go into that because that's the next place I have to be. So in the lib folder, I've got this API GraphQL, and this is where all my GraphQL queries are. So if you aren't familiar with GraphQL, it's really cool. Like I didn't really go into details and explain it the last video or even the beginning of this because I made a lot of assumptions. But as I mentioned last stream, imagine Stanley says, imagine everybody's issue is their first issue, which is cool to say. And perhaps you didn't even watch the last stream. So GraphQL is a really cool way to sort of, it's like a complement to REST. It's not a replacement for REST. but it's a way for you to interact with your APIs. So REST API being the most common, but there's also like SOAP and other ones. GraphQL is another one. And you build it based on queries. I'm using OneGraph. So OneGraph specifically, you have to call out that you're using GitHub. Like if you want to pull from YouTube, you could. Perhaps, or Twitch or whatever. I could do that. But what I need to do is basically just take the data that is in here. So if I go back to my OneGraph, and the cool thing about this is that, so I do have an open source, like, I should probably pop that a little bigger, make that bigger. I do have an open source project, so I could be logging with open source, but I haven't got around to that. But I say all that because this is broken. Oh, it's not broken. Cool. So all the data I'm looking for, like I want to specifically have this dynamic. I want to find all my contributions. Yeah, zooming back. I want to find all the contributions based on a repo. And that's what this code is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. Man, I apologize. Like I'm going all over the place. I should probably have a script in the future so I don't have to jump back and forth. But I completely forgot that I'm going to completely ignore pull request. And the reason why is this, not the random note, but the fact that GitHub's API doesn't actually filter pull requests the same way you can do with issues. And when I say filter, like I want to filter on viewer if I'm subscribed to the issue, then I want to get all the notifications for that issue. If I wanted to filter by only pull requests that I opened, there's not an easy way to do it, at least in GraphQL, on how to do that. I guess the assumption is not a lot of pull requests will be open, but there are some projects where there are a lot of pull requests. So like I don't want to get like the next all 50 open pull requests. Like I just want the ones that I have, and I wasn't able to figure out how to filter that on my own without using the search API. So like I can write a request for searching for open source where I'm the author, where I'm the author, and it's also open. So like I can do that on a GitHub pull request, but those are very expensive. And when I say expensive, like I originally started off with talking about rate limiting as like a test for the GraphQL API, and there's like you only have 5,000 points of request. And search is probably the most expensive one to use. So if someone, like if I wrote the wrong code and it was like a recursive loop or whatever, like I would hit the rate limit just from developing it. So I don't want to approach that while I'm approaching this. So what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to essentially this try C note below. I'm going to punt on doing anything with pull requests for now. And I'm just going to focus on issues because I don't want to try to do both things at the same time. So I should probably, after the stream, I'll open up a new issue specifically for pull requests. And I'll do that discovery in the future. But for now, I want to find all my repo contributions. And I'm going to just drop that into my code base. I was going to say I had this alphabetized, but it's all over the place. I think what I was doing, I was putting all the queries up top alphabetized. No, I'm not. I goes before F. Anyway, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I'll do that later. I'll put it right here. And the cool thing about this is that like I know this query works because I tested it. So what I'm going to do is call this repo query, repo interactions query. And the way I've set this up, like this might not be the best, but I've only ever done GraphQL on my own project, so like I don't know what everybody else is doing. I've seen other people like write blog posts about it, but like if this could be better, interactions, yeah. If this could be better, I'd love to feedback. Open source projects, so definitely hit me up or add an issue, open an issue, and tell me how I can make this better. But for now, I'm just going to do some copy pasta. Repo interactions query. Here we go. Here we go. All right. Fetch repo interactions. It's going to name it. So I'm doing copy pasta, but I'm just going to name it specifically for that, for repo interactions. I might add pull requests to this. I might have, because like, it's not technically a contribution until like you've either opened the issue. Is a comment a contribution? I don't know. But I'm going to call them interactions because I want to be a little more broader on if issues are interactions and pull requests are contributions. Because I'm pretty sure the green squares only show up if you've actually submitted code, not if you've opened an issue. But I could have missed a blog post on when that changed. But with that being said, I'm going to make sure, I didn't really mention this, but I'm using one graph. One graph is fetching directly using this config. We don't need to go into details on how that works. Like, feel free to look into that. But what I'm going to do is have under my API object, which I don't know. I started this like a couple years ago. I'd probably prefer exposing not the one object, but probably exposing these all separate. But I don't know. Hindsight's 2020. There's always going to be a better way to write code, and if I spend too much time trying to make everything pretty, I might just go crazy. All right. So I basically added. I'm gonna git commit. I adds fetch repo interaction query. I've added a query. I didn't do add. And I'm just going to commit where I'm there because that's like, I think that's a clean breaking point to have it in a commit, especially if it's going to be a work in progress. And then since I have that query now and I have this API endpoint, I want to fetch goal query. Okay. So as soon as I sort of launched into this repo, I'm doing a couple things. I'm fetching the repo. Sorry, that's not what I'm doing. I'm fetching the repository data, which I don't know why my trackpad naming. All right, so fetching repo query is here. I'm using repo query here. Oh boy. Everything's getting a little laggy. I'm not sure what's going on. All right. But I just wanted to show off that this all leads into a path. Like I'm taking an argument, which I should probably be doing, but for the sake of just getting it to work, I'm just going to do that. And what I'm going to also do is after I've fetched a goal query, I'm always of the opinion, like this is probably not the most optimal code, but repo interactions for the sake of just seeing something on the screen, I'm going to console.log that response just to confirm that like everything I've tested so far is actually working. Catch error. Also not writing proper JavaScript code. Console.error. Error. All right. I've got a missing curly brace. Now I've got to close this with one more thing. There we go. Perfect. All right, so this is, and just so I can find it again. what was it, 4. And this is why I love using the branch, because I can remember the issue number. I'm not going to commit this, but if I, come on, prettier. There we go. If I get lost or if I have to cut the stream and come back and commit this later, well, at least I know where to find it. So that being said, I'm going to run npm start just to see if my console is what? Run on another port. Am I running? Okay, I'll just run it. I think I've got the terminal going somewhere else. That's embarrassing. All right, but you know, it happens to the best of us. Cool. And log it in just to see authorize. Going into repository. And I've got an object here. Cool, and I've got some data. So what I'm gonna do, like I have the data, which is great. I think this is a good stopping point. What I'm gonna do is probably next stream, which will be the weekend, either Friday or Saturday. I apologize. I'm trying to figure out the schedule. I think lunchtime, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is probably gonna be better than doing 8 a.m. Probably have a better chance of people actually showing up too and chatting with me. But in the future, I'm gonna pop into a stream on Friday. Let's just say Friday for now, and probably gonna design like what this is gonna be in Sketch. So won't be any code. I think I'm gonna try to figure out how to place this information. So like I've got the object that I need. Looking at me right here. But now I want to do some stuff with the data that I'm getting back. So I think I'm going to pop open Sketch in the next stream and then figure out where this should be. I personally think it'd be cool if I put it right here, but who knows? Who knows where that box will go? But I'll do some thought, and then we'll code it, and then we'll get it into Storybook, which I wouldn't mind showing that off. I'm not logged into Netlify in this browser, but I am on this one. Yeah, so everything's hosted on Netlify. If you're unfamiliar, it's a pretty cool place to host your Jamstack sites. So if you're doing React or Angular or Svelte, you can do that right here. But yeah, let's see. Why was I pulling this up? I drew a blank. Oh, because I wanted to show off the storybook. Saucecomponents.netlify.com. Yeah, so what I'll do is, what happened? This happened before. Page not found. Okay. It's interesting. I don't know why that did that. But here, ooh, man, I'm waking it up. Page not found. All right, well, take my word for it. There is so I've got a GitHub action that basically is triggering new deploys in my storybook whenever there's changes. I just shipped a new change very recently, and it looks like it's shipping something that's broken. So I gotta figure out. I'll have to figure out what's going on with that. But what I did want to show off, here's an older version. It's literally the same version. It's just for whatever reason the new update is not being shipped. But I did want to point out that I've got all my components here on softcomponents.netlify.com, which is currently broken. But if you wanted to go into older like pull requests, there'll be a link to a working version if you really want to. But what I'm thinking is I have got this like the way my issue cards are set up, or it's not even issue cards. Like my repo is also set up this way. At the moment, I only have one open conversation going. I'm gonna have to figure out how to like make a proper list of this. So that's something. If anybody has any ideas, like feel free to like send me screenshots or correct me if it looks like something else will be better. But I think I'll probably go something with this aesthetic, but something that's actually visibly different than this. But this is a dashboard, so like if I use the same design over and over again. Also, if you see a lot of similarities, this one you can't even hover over. Um, at the time I was building this, uh, oh wow, they have a lighter hover. Ooh, I should look into doing that. At the time I was building this, I was working in LFI, so a lot of the design was completely lifted from some of the things I learned while being in LFI, and it was just me sort of reapproaching what I was working on. So like, actually, not this, and not this. I wonder. Like I worked on this, this thing right here. Definitely, I worked on this. Yeah, there's a couple things I worked on when I was working at Line. This is new. I mean, the UI elements are all pretty much the same. But what I liked about it is it's consistent, and that consistency I brought into this project here. It's not quite the same, that's for sure. But yeah, this line is completely different. But yeah, I'm not the best designer, so I took a lot of cues from there. So if you see a lot of similarities, especially with this like this right what do you call this? What do you would call that thing? This little element. Oh, look at that. That's way broken. She's like way over here. That's a bug. Well, if anybody wants to open issue and figure out why this is like that, some CSS stuff, let me know, because this is supposed to, yeah, it's supposed to disappear once it falls out of frame. So maybe I have to raise the limit or adjust some width somewhere. That's embarrassing. All right. So with that being said, this is like pretty much it. So I really appreciate you watching the stream, because you're probably gonna watch this sometime in the future, future viewer. Please, if you have an issue, actually, if you do have an issue, you can just click on this little circle, exclamation point, take a screenshot, and just write up that that's broken. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter. All my information is here at mutualfund.io. It's a brand new site that I hopefully will be working on in the future. I'd love comments and feedback if you have it. If not, hopefully we'll build like some pretty cool projects. Once I get over this feature, I'd probably have a couple more streams for this particular problem, and then I might go into actually contributing to open source by actually addressing some of these issues and tracking them and leveraging open source. Also, I might work on mutual fund, and this is the template. I just wanted to throw something really quick together. I think this is on Sunday. So yeah, so I want to actually update this and make it more dynamic. I'm here just like chatting with myself, but I do have, oh, I guess I can link it here. Click on that little GitHub icon. I did create a new project called Mutual Fund View because I wanted to play it all with View. And my experience with View was like View 1 and even View 2. View 3 is quite different. I don't know if it's really that different, but where I expected to find things, it was a lot different than where I've known View components to be in the future, or sorry, in the past. So I was trying to leverage this View Twitch player and then add my handle, so that way what you literally just saw with the mutual fund site, I can do that in View and make it a little more dynamic, have like the list, like basically what Jason has here, has like a little blog element or a static site to look at old versions. You know what, maybe I should just watch Introduction to View. What am I doing? Yeah, so I'll watch this and figure that out. But basically, I'm just trying to make it a little more dynamic, have notifications for future. I mean, the best artist copy, so I think I'll just copy Jason exactly 1-to-1. Probably add dark mode too as well. But yeah, just looking to have like a future calendar of like what I'm going to be working on, and to keep myself accountable to actually show up every week. But with that being said, appreciate you chilling with me, watching me sort of work through open source. And yeah, next on Friday, I will do a sketch, and then we'll try to get it in a storybook. Didn't do a ton of code. It was actually mostly explaining and copy and paste, but since I got a chance to explain the project, hopefully that was enough for me to say, okay, if you don't know what I was talking about or what Jamstack is, I can just say, let's look at part 2 of contributions, and we'll move from there. But yeah, so that being said, I'm just gonna log off and say, hey, stay saucy, do open source, contribute, and then hit me up in Twitter. Bye.